在国家统计局刚刚公布的经济数据中，宏观经济形势仍然是大家关注的焦点。
沪深股市今天没有继续走出反弹行情，很多投资者都在持币。
国际油价开始回落，但
地产报告显示，很多地产企业的资金链已经相当。
在珠三角地区，其中一部分中小企业正在想办法解决他们遇到的困难。
在今年的 CCTV 经济年度人物评选当中，中国创造仍然是最重要的主题。
很少有一个国家的大选能够得到如此多来自全世界的关注，即使从某种意义上说，它只是4年一次的政治表演而已，所轮换的只是舞台上的主角，而这也许就是美国大选的魅力所在。美国大选经历了将近200年的风雨，而每年的议题在政治、经济和军事间不停地转换，而今年2012年美国总统大选，经济牌和中国牌成为毋庸置疑的主题。1991年，怀揣着改变世界的梦想，奥巴马从哈佛法学院毕业。1975年，在同样一片校园，罗姆尼从哈佛商学院荣誉毕业。两位杰出的哈佛校友在毕业数年后，分别成为美国民主党和共和党的最高代言人。而今天呢，在我身后的哈佛肯尼迪学院的辩论大堂里，哈佛的师生正沉浸在2012年美国总统大选的电视辩论赛中。首场电视辩论6个议题中有3个围绕经济展开，而这也恰恰印证了今年5月华盛顿邮报和美国广播公司 ABC 进行的一次联合调查的结果。调查希望了解民众在选择总统时考虑的最重要的因素是什么。结果，52%的被调查者选择了就业和经济，医疗保险问题只获得了7%受访者的关注，而外交政策问题仅获得了1%的关注。在哈佛大学的图书馆，我们找到了美国皮尤研究中心1月份的最新数据，显示15年来美国人对国内经济政策的关注程度达到了历史最高点。这也不禁让我们想起1992年的那场美国总统选举。面对当时非常低迷的美国经济，克林顿对决布什的竞选口号是 "Stupid, it's economy"， 笨蛋，这是经济问题。我现在所在的这条街道，也许是世界上最著名的街道之一，这就是华尔街。2008年的金融危机因为这里的贪婪而波及了全球经济，而去年占领华尔街运动也向我们传递着一个重要的声音，那就是在美国99%的穷人抗议着1%的富人。而今年的美国大选中的经济政策也是从这条街出发，开始讨论美国经济增长的新方式，以及因为经济增长带来的福利该在美国这个社会如何分配。华尔街的金融市场每天的外汇交易量高达4万亿美元，所产生的收益在流入资本市场的同时，也开始了向政治的聚集。自从2010年美国联邦最高法院解除了商业机构资助选举人的限制后，资金大量的介入美国的选举活动。美国政治响应中心的数据显示，到9月为止，华尔街已向竞选候选人和政治组织捐款了1.64亿美元。到大选前，捐款总额将高达25亿美元，最终将会有大约100亿美元用在2012年总统大选上，这远远高于2008年的70亿美元。其中，给奥巴马和罗姆尼捐款最多的都是银行。华尔街对政治家和大选的影响力正在从金融危机重创中恢复。
So the President Obama attributed the Occupy Wall Street to the Main Street's dissatisfaction with the Wall Street. But do you think is the Main Street dissatisfied with Wall Street or with the government?
I think he was absolutely right to say that the Occupy Wall Street movement was generated by anger at Wall Street. But part of the anger at Wall Street is at the way in which financial interests have captured so much of government. So there is anger at both Wall Street and government, but Obama is right to identify popular feeling as focusing on the big banks and the other financial interests.
So what is the definition of 1% of 99% in U.S.?
This terminology was the result of a lot of economic clarity about the dominance of 1%, the top wealthy people, the most wealthy people, over the other 99%. And so it came to pass that the 1% were making the lion's share of the increases in income over recent years, and that they account for 40% of the total wealth of the society, whereas 99% of the country account for 60%.
What do you think is best, like economic policy, to solve such a problem?
I think that we need a series of measures to reward work as much as we reward investment. So I think that capital gains should be taxed at the same rate as ordinary income. I think that we should be taxing financial transactions, the so-called Robin Hood tax. I think that we should be investing in public infrastructure, and which improves productivity and creating more jobs.
美国大选硝烟再起，两党之争战火重燃，奥巴马、罗姆尼迎来最后决战。什么是目前美国经济的最大挑战？什么是两党经济论战的本质区别？美国大选为何频繁打出中国牌？央视财经评论员艾诚赴美国带来最新选情观察：2012年美国大选的经济牌和中国牌。
如今的美国大选已经演绎成一场关于经济的论战。从更深层次的意义上来说，美国大选中的经济政策的本质实际上是支持政府干预的凯恩斯和支持自由主义的哈耶克的一场世纪对决。我想，无论是奥巴马还是罗姆尼，谁获得这场对决的胜利，都将会决定接下来美国4年的经济政策，影响中国乃至世界的经济。
I support President Obama for his economic policies because he supports taxing the wealthy 1% in this country at a higher rate than Mitt Romney does. And when we can tap into that wealth, we can then redistribute that wealth into healthcare, into education, and to other social services that give the other 99% in this country a chance to become upwardly mobile.
I'm voting for Obama, and I'm inviting everybody to go for Obama because the economic policies of the president have helped profoundly the Latino community in the United States. In the Affordable Health Care Act alone, about 9 million families, Latino families, were benefited.
My preference is to vote for Governor Romney, and the reasons are as follows. Number one, the president has been in office 4 years. If I were running any company and I were in office for 4 years, my board would fire me if I had not had an impact on the company by then, right? Number two, there are some actions that he could have taken that he has not taken. For example, he has not declared a tax holiday to bring home the $1 trillion in American currency that's overseas, held in the treasuries of U.S. companies overseas. Right now, it's a very high tax.
我当然想投奥巴马，因为我觉得奥巴马吧，他比较能够顾及到穷人的利益。尤其在经济危机的时候吧，穷人的打击会比富人要大得多。作为一个总统呢，他不能把一个国家吧当成一个经济实体来这么操作，他应该考虑到穷人啦，或者是残疾人啦，或者是退役军人这些人的利益，
弱势群体的
弱势群体利益。
奥巴马一直奉行凯恩斯主义，支持通过国家干预的方式，采用扩张性的经济政策，通过增加需求促进经济增长，比如量化宽松的货币政策。但奥巴马在任4年的经济形势并未出现明显好转。而罗姆尼主张的哈耶克的思想则与之相反。哈耶克相信，资本主义经济本身有一种自行趋于稳定的机能，反对国家对于经济生活的干预，主张通过削减政府开支、收缩福利项目等办法来控制联邦赤字。
And also some people comment this presidential debate as a debate between Hayek and Keynes. So at the professor from John Lennon School, so could you give us a very specific example or interesting story to describe the two theories?
Well, Keynes believes that in an economic contraction, which we're still fighting our way out of, you invest in, the government investment is crucial. You directly invest in creating jobs. You run the risk of a higher deficit, and in order to produce growing demand. The Hayek view is that business ought to be left free to do what it wants, and the role of the government is to resist inflation. But this is really what the difference is about.
I'm an admirer of both Keynes and Hayek. They both said very interesting things. One should read both of them. But I think the way politics goes, political disputes tend to polarize. And so it definitely looks like Romney is on the Hayek side and Obama on the Keynes side.
奥巴马和罗姆尼都为今后4年制定了详细的经济计划，两者均剑指美国当下8.3%的失业率、1.7%的经济增长率和16万亿美元政府公债，而在具体方式上存在着显著的差异。奥巴马依然延续着其注重社会福利的经济理念，这包括延长对中产阶级家庭的减税期限，改善老年和贫困群体的医疗待遇，同时深入金融业改革，以防止2008年金融危机的重演。而罗姆尼则放言废除奥巴马的经济政策，其计划的核心是推出小企业减税政策，惩罚打破贸易协议的国家，并缩减政府开支，以填补巨额赤字。此外，罗姆尼计划限制医疗福利支出，废除奥巴马的医疗改革方案。
Who do you think will be more likely to win this time?
If any of your TV viewers would like to go on the internet, there's actually a website called intrade.com, INTRADE.com, where people can actually buy and sell shares, stock shares in will Obama win or will Romney win. And the price of the shares is determined by how many people want to buy each share. So you can get the price of a share gives the probability that Obama will win, a price of an Obama share. And right now it's showing a probability of about 0.8, 8 out of 10 chances that Obama will win. That's up from about 0.6 last March. But I guess I have no reason to contradict what people in general seem to be saying, what the polls are saying. But if your TV viewers want to see some changes, they should get on the internet. If there are changes, they can check every day. Check what's the price of an Obama stock right now, and then they can figure out what people in general who are participating in this think Obama's chances to win are.
And from your perspective, what is the fundamental difference of the economic policies from Obama and Romney?
I think there's a fairly dramatic difference both in philosophy and also in the practical policies that come out of that. Basically, the Republican Party believes that if you have a free market system with as little intervention by the government as possible, companies and individuals will move the economy forward through innovation, starting new businesses, which America is very good at, trying to expand your businesses and so forth. The Democrats, I think, disagree with that, I think probably in 3 ways. First, they are more likely to think that the economy left to its own devices without regulation, let's say of banks and so forth, it runs the danger of having bubbles and crashes and so forth every once in a while, like we had with the financial crisis of 2008. So you need some regulations, number one. Second thing Democrats believe is that there are services provided by the government, such as education, basic scientific research, or paid for by the government, basic scientific research, infrastructure, roads, highways, and so forth, that play a very important part in allowing economic growth, and that you need a government that is doing a good job providing those building blocks of education and so forth. And then third, Democrats are probably on the whole more concerned with the people who are left behind when the economy moves forward. For whatever reasons, maybe they were born, they're not as smart as some other people, so they may work very hard, or maybe even they don't work as hard, but they're human beings, and they don't deserve to starve or to to fall by the wayside, so to speak. So Democrats are more likely to have some concern for those people and think that people who can't make it on their own in the economy need some help from the government.
From your perspective, what is the fundamental difference, on the economic policy from Obama and Romney?
Well, I think the most important issue that investors have for the medium term, maybe not the short term, but the medium term, is the level of government spending, which is running at about $1 trillion a year. And the question is, how quickly will that issue be addressed? And I think Obama is taking more of a gradualistic view because he's concerned about the economic growth, and he doesn't want it to cut off government spending too quickly, whereas I think Romney is more willing to change the taxes and government spending, which may in the short term slow the economy down more, but in the longer term might be better to solve the debt problems.
And in terms of the coming fiscal cliff in 2013, who do you think, which candidate is more welcomed?
Well, right now, if the Obama taxes come off, which they're expected to, and the spending cuts happen, that's estimated to be a 3% cut in government spending, 3% of GDP. That is tremendous and would certainly set the U.S. into recession. Obama has basically said that he won't let all the taxes go up, and certainly the Republicans don't want that. So one has to assume that only the taxes on the wealthy would go up if Obama had his say, in which case that's really going to be the difference, is just the taxes on the wealthy on the two in the short term.
In this presidential election, who do you think is more likely to win?
Right. Well, this is going to be a very close presidential election. Obama, as the incumbent, has all the advantages of incumbency, but the economy is so weak, which is really historically an indicator that that Romney would win. So I think right now it's really too close to call.
美国大选硝烟再起，两党之争战火重燃，奥巴马、罗姆尼迎来最后决战。什么是目前美国经济的最大挑战？什么是两党经济论战的本质区别？美国大选为何频繁打出中国牌？央视财经评论员艾诚赴美国带来最新选情观察，2012年美国大选的经济牌和中国牌。
价值无处不在，中央电视台财经频道。
这次2012年美国总统大选经济论战的一个重要的焦点，就是两党对于中国不同的经济政策。奥巴马的中国牌再一次聚焦到为美国人争回那些因为中国而流失的制造业的工作机会，而罗姆尼则在军事、就业等方面不停地抨击奥巴马对华政策的软弱。那么这一次美国大选频繁地涉及中国牌，到底是因为什么呢？
今年9月，奥巴马宣布向世贸组织对中国提出申诉。他抱怨说，中国向本国汽车零部件出口行业提供的补贴，压制了美国本土汽车零部件行业的生存空间。奥巴马此举显然是为了争取包括俄亥俄在内的摇摆州的选票。在白宫针对中国补贴汽车行业向世贸组织提出的申诉后，罗姆尼立即表态称，自己多年来一直认为中国是不公平贸易伙伴。不仅如此，他在今年5月时就曾宣称，上任第1天就会将中国定为汇率操纵国。
So why this time both parties play so frequently on China's policy?
Oh, it's kind of like what Bill Clinton said in 1992. He said, when he was running for president the first time, he said, it's the economy, stupid. We're in somewhat of a similar situation today, where George H.W. Bush was president, running against a challenger, Bill Clinton. And Clinton was trying to focus on the fact that the economy had not recovered and had a new plan. So what's happening now, 20 years later, in 2012, is the U.S. economy is again weak. We have an incumbent president, and we have a challenger in Governor Romney who is trying to portray the president's policy as weak. Where China fits in that campaign program is that he is trying to portray, Governor Romney is trying to portray President Obama as weak on China, and that weakness on China has cost American jobs and therefore delayed the the American economic recovery. So that's where China has fit in. President Obama recognized that very early on, that that was going to be the case. And once the campaign started, he took and kind of verbalized a much tougher economic policy towards China. So what we've seen is additional WTO filings by the United States and kind of a rhetoric that is saying we need to have tougher economic policies towards China.
Yeah, we realize both parties play a lot on China policy, and just wondering what is real reason behind.
Well, it's always easy to blame foreigners in your own country for things that are going wrong. And so China now, because it plays such an important role in the global economy, it's inevitable that criticism is going to turn towards China. But I think we have to be realistic about how much is rhetoric and how much policy will really change significantly after the election. So I think what has been carried out to date has been more positioning for voters in the US rather than what people see as long-term policy. I also think there's a very significant difference between the way the federal government and Washington looks at China and the way the individual states in the US do. If you go around the states in America, they're very keen on Chinese investment, Chinese capital, trade for a number of provinces, states like Nevada, for example, has increased 500% over the last few years. So I think we're seeing a divergence between the rhetoric in Washington and the reality on the ground in different states. And I think most of the states are moving very fast to encourage increased Chinese investment in a whole range of areas. So there are policy differences. I think Mr. Romney, as an aspirant, has probably taken a harsher view of China in terms of saying from day one we'll nominate it as a currency manipulator. That actually includes a process that may or may not go forward. And I think by contrast, President Obama, having been president for 4 years, has had to take a more moderate tone. But at the same time, I think he feels compelled to be critical of China and China trade practices, in part because of Mr. Romney's comments, but also I think because a lot of people in the American business community are generally concerned about access to the China market and fair play rules in dealing with China.
All these economic policy they claimed on the currency issues, export, how practical it is?
Currency issue, I think, is a red herring. That what we've seen since 2005 is a revaluation of the Chinese currency, which has brought it almost into line with what it would be if it were traded on a market basis. So we are actually, when we say that, when Governor Romney says that's what he's going to do, he is really talking about an issue which may have been important in 2005, but today is really not on the top 20 issues that the United States has with China. What President Obama is focusing on is market access, protection of intellectual property rights, things which actually, when you talk to U.S. investors in China, are truly important. In other words, U.S. investors in China care about market access. They care about the transparency of the bidding process. They care about when their intellectual property rights are violated. These are things which cost them money. But when you ask them, is the valuation of the RMB important? Most of them shrug and say, it's not in my top 20.
Is it more political meaning than economical meaning behind all these economic policies?
Yes, I think it is a more political meaning than it is economic, because the United States needs to deal with incredibly complex, difficult issues. By blaming this all on China, in a lot of ways it's a very simple issue. It's not our fault. It's the fault of China. And if China behaved fairly, that would solve U.S. economic difficulties. That is not the case. We are facing a fiscal cliff. The United States has been spending more than it has been receiving by enormous amounts. Come the beginning of 2013, no matter who is elected president, we're going to have to confront those issues and make very difficult decisions to cut entitlements, to reduce government expenditures, to increase taxes. These are very tough political issues.
But how will the economic policy differ on China if Romney or Obama elected?
Well, on day one,
Yeah.
Governor Romney is going to brand China a currency manipulator, which in and of itself is only a symbolic act. There are no real consequences. There'll have to be additional findings and subsequent to that, and then it could potentially create disruptions in U.S.-China relations. Don't forget, we're having two transitions at the same time. We're having a presidential election in the United States, and we're having 十八大 in China. So we will have a president who's going to preside over the U.S.-China political, economic, and strategic relationship for the next 4 years, and we'll have a new president of China who's going to preside over the economic, political, and strategic relationship with the United States for the next 5 years. So those transitions are occurring at the same time, which makes the situation both a terrific opportunity and a risk.
随着11月6号美国大选的临近，奥巴马和罗姆尼的经济论战仍在继续。美国民众最终会选择支持政府干预的奥巴马，还是信仰自由市场的罗姆尼？这不仅影响着未来4年的美国走向，也对中国乃至世界经济影响重大。
4年一次的美国大选，从次贷危机到欧债危机，经济永远是焦点中的焦点。而奥巴马和罗姆尼所代表的两党声音，也意味着凯恩斯和哈耶克的世纪经济辩论即将上演。而与此同时，我们也发现，在这场轰轰烈烈的美国大选中，中国牌只不过是两党为了争取更多的选民所采用的一种老生常谈的政治手段而已。感谢您收看今天的节目，我是艾诚，我们下期再见。